There is a kind of pain that does not shout. It does not bleed openly, nor does it demand the world's sympathy. No, this pain walks quietly beside you, dressed in the familiar faces of those who should have protected you. It comes not from enemies, but from those who held your trust, wore your love like a cloak, and returned it with repeated wounds. And perhaps what makes it most unbearable is that it was not once, it was over and over again, as if your mercy was a weakness, and your silence a permission slip for cruelty. But let us ponder something deeper. What happens when the soul refuses to fight back in anger, but instead folds its hands and lets heaven respond? What happens when you cease to defend yourself and begin to believe that a higher justice sees what others overlook? The world may call it naive, but in the kingdom of God, it is strength. True strength is not always loud. It is often the quiet endurance of the righteous. You see, those who hurt others repeatedly are not just committing actions. They are weaving a pattern. And every pattern has a shape, a rhythm, and eventually a consequence. The deceit, the betrayal, the lies, they are laying bricks on a path they will one day be forced to walk. They do not know it yet, but they are digging a pit with hands too blind to see the edge. And what of karma? Many speak of it as if it were an impersonal force, a universal payback system. But look closer and you'll see. What people call karma, the faithful know as divine justice in motion. God is not indifferent. He is not asleep. He is not slow to act. He is precise, patient, and deliberate. While your heart breaks in silence, He is recording every offense. While they repeat their betrayal, He is drawing the lines of their lesson. There is a strange comfort that visits the soul who has been wronged yet chooses not to retaliate. It is the quiet knowing that justice, when it is divine, is never delayed. It is merely perfected in silence. Those who created cycles of pain will one day be trapped in them, not because you wished it, but because the laws of heaven cannot be mocked. Think of the rain. It does not rush, it waits. Then it falls, drenching all things equally. So too is divine consequence. It may not arrive on your timeline, but when it does, it waters everything with purpose. So, if they have hurt you repeatedly, and you wonder why heaven has not yet responded, remember this. God is never hasty because He is never wrong. He waits until the trap they built with their own hands is sealed, not by your anger, but by their own pattern. That is the cycle they created. That is the justice He allows. Now breathe. You are not forgotten. You are not foolish for forgiving. You are not weak for staying kind. You are simply under divine protection, hidden in plain sight, while heaven arranges what no man can undo. The repetition of harm is the blueprint of their downfall. There is something hauntingly predictable about cruelty when it is repeated. It reveals not just a flaw in the moment, but a pattern of heartlessness that becomes a habit, almost a rhythm. When someone hurts you once, it can be called a mistake. When they hurt you twice, you begin to wonder. But when they hurt you again and again, it is no longer a moment. It becomes a map of who they truly are beneath the mask. And while they may smile to the world, their behavior toward you lays the foundation of their own ruin. Every repeated act of betrayal isn't just a stab, it's a brick. They are laying down the path they must eventually walk, unaware that every cruel word, every manipulative move, every time they chose to exploit your kindness instead of honor it, is recorded, not just in your memory, but in the eternal mind of God. Nothing escapes His gaze. What was done in secret becomes the seed of what will grow in the open. You may have wondered why they get away with it, why the liars sleep peacefully while you weep into your pillow, why the ones who deceive walk freely while you carry the burden of truth. But truth is not quicksand. It is a seed, and just like the deceitful sow, their own downfall, the faithful are preparing for harvest. You may feel buried by the weight of it all, but you are not forgotten. They, however, are building their own trap with every act they repeat in arrogance. Evil is never content with one act. It always comes back for more. And every return adds to the weight of their debt. Their soul begins to bend under the pressure of their own actions, but they cannot see it. They mistake repetition for power. They think they're winning because they haven't fallen yet. But repetition is never neutral. When done with evil intent, it becomes a curse in disguise. God allows it, not because He is absent, but because He is letting the blueprint draw itself completely. He allows them to go further, not to reward them, but to ensure there is no doubt about the judgment to come. Some people think judgment is a dramatic act of thunder from the heavens, but more often it is quiet. It's a pattern completing itself. It's karma arriving like a mirror they can't avoid. And what's most powerful is that God doesn't need to force them into destruction. He simply lets them follow the road they built for themselves. The one paved with the pieces of your broken trust, with the echoes of your silence, with the record of their repetition. This is how God works. He allows them to walk deeper into the forest they thought they controlled. He allows them to climb higher on the ladder they believe leads to victory, unaware that the last rung breaks beneath the weight of their ego. And by the time they realize what they've done, they are already caught. Not by you, not by your revenge, but by the trap they made with their own hands. So if you're hurting, not from one betrayal, but from the pattern of it, remember this. What feels like defeat is the evidence of your discernment. You saw the truth. You felt the repetition. You recognized the poison. And because you didn't return evil for evil, you are not part of their cycle. You are simply the mirror that showed them who they really are. They didn't just hurt you. They showed God who they've become. And God, in His perfect justice, will let them live long enough to walk the path their choices carved out. The same path they laughed on when they stepped over your heart will one day feel like thorns beneath their feet. And you will have risen, not because of them, but because grace was always with you. Your silence is a spiritual weapon. There is a sacred kind of strength in silence. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence of restraint. The world misunderstands it. It praises those who clap back, who strike first, who avenge themselves with loud words and loud actions. But in the kingdom of heaven, it is the one who holds their peace in the presence of injustice that stands closest to divine power. They hurt you, and you said nothing. Not because you were weak, but because something in your spirit whispered, "Let it go, let God see." Every time they provoked you to anger, and you walked away instead of retaliating, heaven took notice. Your silence became a shield. While they mistook your quiet for powerlessness, God saw it as spiritual wisdom. You weren't letting them win, you were stepping out of the way so that God could take over. When someone wounds you and expects you to fight back, your refusal to enter the arena confuses them. That confusion, that's the beginning of their own undoing, because silence is not a void. It is a space where God speaks. It is in silence that truth breathes. And when the noise of chaos fades, the voice of justice becomes deafening. They thought they could control the narrative, But when you didn't engage, they lost the script. They could no longer paint you as bitter, angry, or unstable. They only had their own behavior to deal with, and eventually, the echoes of their own lies start to haunt them. Silence is not absence, it is alignment. It is you saying, "This is not my battle to fight." The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, you begin to live above the cycle. And it is this elevation that brings divine protection. Because God does not fight battles in the mud. He lifts you out of the pit, while letting your enemies sink deeper into it. They repeated the hurt, you repeated the silence. And while they thought their repetition made them dominant, your silence made you invincible. Because silence doesn't just protect your dignity, it draws a line. It tells the heavens, "I will not become like them. I will not trade my soul to win a war I was never called to fight." And that choice separates you. It sets you apart for restoration. You may not see the results immediately. Silence often feels like invisibility. But there is a kind of favor that grows in the hidden places. God uses your restraint to prepare something greater. He uses your refusal to curse them to prepare a blessing they will never understand. And in time, your silence becomes the loudest testimony of who you are. They were loud with their cruelty, loud with their gossip, loud with their pride, but your quietness was filled with faith. Every time you swallowed the urge to retaliate, you handed God a thread, and He has been weaving something in the background that no one sees, not even you. But when it appears, it will not just restore your peace. It will reveal who was walking in the light and who was dancing in shadows. The trap they created is not built from your words, it is built from their own. And that's what silence does. It refuses to contribute to the chaos. It forces the storm to implode on itself. You didn't need to curse them. Their own mouth has already written their judgment. You didn't need to expose them. Their actions have already unmasked their character. You didn't need to shout. Your stillness echoes straight to the throne of God. And from that throne, judgment flows in perfect timing. Not rushed, not delayed, just right. It's the silence that declares, "I trust you, Lord." It's the silence that says, "You saw what they did. I don't need to scream. I don't need to prove. I just need to remain faithful." One day they will remember your silence. They will remember that you could have ruined them, but you didn't. They will remember that you could have destroyed their name, but you chose peace. And in that remembrance, they will tremble. Not because of what you did, but because of what you didn't do. Because the silence they mocked became the storm they couldn't escape. Karma is God's classroom for the arrogant. There is a peculiar blindness that arrogance brings. It convinces people they are untouchable, immune to consequence, above correction. The ones who repeatedly hurt others often do so with the illusion that they are in control, not just of outcomes, but of perception, of truth, of destiny itself. They act as though life owes them immunity, as if their charm, position, or manipulation will shield them from the ripple of their own choices. But that illusion cannot outrun eternity. What they dismiss as mere cause and effect, God has ordained as instruction. Karma is not just a force, it is a lesson, and those who refuse to learn through humility will be enrolled by the hand of divine justice. Every action carries within it a seed, and the arrogant, in their foolish pride, scatter seeds of pain without thought, without pause, without care. But God is not mocked. The ground remembers. Time remembers, and heaven remembers. What is sown in shadows grows under divine supervision. You may have watched them walk with confidence while you carried the ache they caused. They smiled while you wept. They celebrated while you mourned. And it felt like injustice was winning. But God does not operate on our schedules. He teaches the arrogant not through words, but through their own consequences. He does not need to send a prophet to warn them. He allows their own choices to become the voice of judgment. The ones who mocked your tears will one day face their own reflection in the mirror of karma, and they will not recognize what stares back at them. Because karma does not strike in anger, it arrives with clarity. It places their actions before them without filter, without excuse, without escape. It is a curriculum they cannot drop. It is a classroom they cannot exit. And God, in His mercy, still allows them to learn, even if it is through pain. The arrogant believe their ladder to success is eternal. They forget that every rung was built either by integrity or deceit. And when deceit supports the climb, collapse is only a matter of time. God permits the rise, not to reward them, but to set the stage for their revelation. He allows them to build high so that when the fall comes, it reveals not just their height, but the hollowness of the foundation. That is karma, not punishment, but a return, a divine echo, a mirror held up to the soul. And while they mocked you for being too kind, too patient, too forgiving, they never realized that these very qualities were the reason you remained covered. Your humility was your armor, your compassion was your shelter, and because you walked with integrity, you never stepped into the fire they created. You stayed just outside the circle, close enough to feel the heat, but far enough to be preserved. God kept you there, not because you were forgotten, but because He was writing a story they wouldn't be able to rewrite. Their pride becomes their prison. Their lies become their leash. Their deception becomes their undoing. And it all happens without your intervention. That's what makes God's justice both beautiful and terrifying. It doesn't need your help to unfold. It happens quietly, steadily, with divine accuracy. The very things they thought gave them power will betray them. The very paths they walked to hurt you will become their stumbling blocks. Do not envy their temporary success. Do not resent their loud victories, because in God's classroom the test always comes before the lesson. But for the arrogant, the lesson arrives when the applause fades and silence takes over, when the crowd disperses and the consequences come knocking. That's when karma enters, not to destroy, but to reveal, not to shame, but to expose. And when they finally sit in the desk of divine consequence, they will learn what you already knew, that what we give to others, we ultimately give to ourselves, that every cruelty returns, not as revenge, but as a required lesson. And some will graduate into humility. Others will repeat the cycle until the pain breaks their pride. But you will walk free, because you didn't enroll in that class. You passed the test by choosing peace. And now, while karma teaches them through chaos, God leads you by grace. God waits until the trap is set by their own hands. There is a profound mystery in the way God operates. We often expect immediate justice, swift intervention, a dramatic reversal, a loud declaration of wrong made right. But the God who shaped the stars is not in a rush to prove His power. He is not pressured by our impatience. He is not reactive. He is purposeful. And so, while you waited for vindication, He was waiting too, but not out of neglect, out of strategy. God waits until the trap they built with their own hands is sealed. He lets them dig deep, walk far, and build high. Why? Because divine justice is not just about correction, it's about exposure. And exposure only works when there is no way out but the one they sealed shut. The longer they lie, the more confident they become. The more they hurt you, the more reckless they get. But all the while, God is watching, not to stop them mid-sin, but to let them finish it, so that when the consequence comes, there is no confusion, no misunderstanding, no room to twist the truth. You may have wondered why God didn't step in when the pain was fresh, when the betrayal was loud, when your heart was breaking open. But what you didn't see was what He saw, that stopping them early would have only disguised the truth. They would have played the victim, they would have said you misunderstood. But now, because He waited, the pattern is clear. The evidence is undeniable. The trap is entirely theirs. God is a master of timing. He lets them get comfortable in the lie. He lets them speak boldly against you, manipulate the truth, control the narrative. But He does not interfere, because He is letting their own words become the bars of their prison. And when the day of reckoning comes, He does not need to lift a hand. Their own actions testify against them. Their own intentions betray them. It's hard to watch, isn't it? To see them thrive while you're in pieces, to see them enjoy life while you struggle to breathe. But what you're seeing is not a blessing, it's a setup. They are not escaping justice, they are heading straight into it. Because God is not only merciful, He is just. And when the line is crossed enough times, He lets the consequence arrive in the very form they never expected. They laughed while you cried. They built lies like castles, but God does not destroy castles with storms. He waits until the foundations rot from within. He lets the termites of their own deceit eat away at the structure. And when the collapse comes, it will not be a tragedy. It will be a revelation. Everyone will see it. Even they will see it. And there will be no one to blame but themselves. There's a reason the wicked prosper for a season. That season is not reward, it's rope. Rope they twist around their own neck with every repeated sin. God lets them believe they've gotten away with it, so when the fall comes, it is clear that it was not sabotage, it was self-destruction, and this is why you must not interrupt what God is allowing. If you fight them, you become entangled in their trap. If you curse them, you confuse the narrative, but if you stay silent and faithful, God completes the lesson on your behalf. The most powerful part, He doesn't just expose them, He elevates you. The same stage that reveals their downfall becomes the platform for your healing. The same people who doubted you will witness your restoration, and they'll wonder how you survived, how you remained kind, how you never sought revenge. And the answer will be simple. God waited, so I waited too. They thought the silence was approval. They thought your distance meant defeat. But now, the trap is closing, not with your hands, but with theirs. Every lie, every insult, every betrayal, it all circles back, and when it does, it doesn't whisper. It roars. And you will watch not with hatred, but with peace, because you'll finally understand that God doesn't just punish evil. He lets it finish its course. So when the door slams shut, there's no doubt about who built it and why it closed. Cycles of pain become cycles of consequence. There is a sobering truth that echoes through every sacred teaching and every corner of human history. What we put into the world does not vanish, it multiplies. Pain given without remorse does not dissolve in time, it roots itself in eternity and returns. Not as revenge, but as consequence. And when harm becomes a cycle, it awakens a greater cycle, one that only God can design, and only the guilty can endure. The ones who hurt you repeatedly did not just hurt you, they trained themselves to hurt. Their cruelty became routine, their betrayal became habit, and soon it stopped feeling wrong to them. That's the most dangerous part of evil. It numbs the soul of the one who commits it. They no longer feel the weight of their actions. They no longer stop to question what it costs someone else to carry what they freely give. Manipulation, lies, disrespect. And in doing so, they enter a loop, a cycle where their choices become their identity, where the damage they cause circles back like a tide they once controlled, but now cannot stop. They created this cycle not by accident, but by decision. They chose the easy road of selfishness over the hard road of accountability. They chose deception over healing. And now they must walk the same circular path, again and again, until they finally meet the version of themselves they tried to bury in others. God doesn't have to chase them down. He only needs to let their momentum continue, because when someone repeats pain without reflection, they are sowing the same soil again and again, believing that because no storm has come, none ever will. But that's not how God works. He allows the seed to grow, and in time the harvest arrives, not as fruit, but as thorns. This is where karma becomes terrifyingly real. It doesn't rush in with anger. It waits like a shadow, growing stronger with every turn of the cycle. The more they repeat the harm, the more they solidify the loop they cannot escape. And what they once controlled now controls them. They become enslaved by the very behaviors they once used to manipulate others. It starts slowly. A friend turns cold. A door closes. A relationship breaks unexpectedly. Their charm no longer works. Their excuses wear thin. Life starts reflecting back to them what they gave to you and to others. They try to escape it, but every exit leads back to the entrance of the same pattern. They are trapped, not by your hand, but by the rhythm of their own cruelty. You, however, are not in that cycle. You broke it. Not by shouting, not by fighting, but by walking away. You refused to mirror their actions. You refused to give back what they gave you. That is why you're free. And your freedom becomes a mirror too, one they cannot stand to look at, because it reminds them that they had a choice and they made the wrong one. There will come a day when they recognize it, when they look around and realize they are surrounded by the same emptiness they once projected onto others. The same abandonment they handed out returns to their doorstep. The same loneliness they ignored in your voice begins to echo in their own life. That's not karma being cruel. That's karma being just. And what's most powerful is this: God lets the cycle play out, not to humiliate them, but to give them a chance to learn. It's discipline disguised as repetition. It's mercy dressed as consequence. Because even in judgment, God's goal is not destruction, it is transformation. He lets the cycle go on until they either break in bitterness or bow in repentance. That's how grace works. It gives even the cruel a chance to be human again. But not all will choose to change. Some will remain in the loop forever, bitter that life turned on them, blind to the truth that life didn't turn on them. It simply returned to them what they sent out. You will witness this not as an audience to their downfall, but as proof that God sees everything. That no cycle of pain goes unnoticed. That your silence, your faith, your endurance was not wasted. You escaped the loop. They are still inside it, and until they choose to face the truth, every step forward will feel like another circle back to where they started. When you let go, heaven steps in. There is a moment in every wounded soul's journey when the pain becomes too heavy to carry alone. You've tried to hold it with grace. You've wept in silence. You've smiled through the sting. But eventually something shifts, not in the world around you, but deep within. A whisper begins to rise from the pit of your spirit, quiet at first but unmistakable. It says, "Let go." Let go, not because they deserve peace. Let go, not because the wound no longer aches, but let go because heaven cannot fill hands still clinging to what broke them. The act of release is not surrender. It is sacred trust. It is you saying to God, "I have carried this long enough. Now I give it to you." And when you do, when you truly release the weight, the anger, the need for justice, you do not lose. You rise. You rise above the cycle. You rise above the chaos. You rise above the poison of becoming like those who hurt you. And it is in that rise that heaven meets you. Because God does not move in retaliation. He moves in restoration. And restoration begins when you step back and invite Him to step forward. The world says, "Fight back, teach them a lesson." But the heavens say, "Stand still and watch me work." There is a kind of divine power that only reveals itself when we stop striving. While your heart was clenching its fists, God waited. But the moment your hands opened, the winds began to shift. Because that's what letting go does. It breaks the dam. It invites the flood of heaven to wash away what you could never fix alone. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean erasing what happened. It means choosing your future over their offense. It means reclaiming your soul from the grip of bitterness. It means stepping out of the shadow of the wound and into the light of divine protection. Because until you let go, your story is still entangled with theirs. But once you do, your path is no longer tied to their choices. It becomes holy ground, sacred, separate, protected. And here's what makes it beautiful. When you release someone to God, you are not letting them off the hook. You are placing them on His. And His justice is not impulsive. It is perfect. He knows the depth of what they did, even if they deny it. He sees the scars they caused, even if no one else does. And when He acts, He does not miss. Letting go invites miracles. It creates space for newness. It opens doors you didn't even know were locked. Because while you were holding on to pain, your hands were full. But now they are ready. Ready for blessing, ready for peace, ready for healing that isn't temporary, but eternal. They may never apologize, they may never understand, they may never change, but that's not your responsibility anymore. You are not the judge, you are not the rescuer, you are not the one who has to balance the scales. That burden belongs to God, and He has never failed in His role. So take a breath. You've carried this long enough. You've bled long enough. You've walked in circles long enough. Let this be the moment where the story shifts, where heaven sees your release and responds with restoration. Let this be the moment where you say, "I release them, not because they are innocent, but because I choose to be free." And when you let go, you'll feel it. Not all at once, but slowly, like dawn breaking through the fog. Peace will start to return. Your sleep will deepen. Your mind will clear. The bitterness will loosen, and grace, pure, undeserved, heavenly grace, will begin to rise within you. Because when you let go, heaven steps in. And when heaven steps in, everything begins to change. They will one day cry for the mercy they rejected. There will come a moment, quiet and uninvited, when the very people who dismissed your pain will feel the echo of it in their own soul, not because you wished it, not because you prayed for it, but because mercy, once mocked, does not disappear. It waits, and when it returns, it does not come as an offer, it comes as a question. They will sit alone in the silence they used to fear. The same silence you cried into, they will now endure. The same abandonment they forced upon you will find its way into their lives, unannounced and unrelenting. And in that hour, they will reach for grace. They will long for understanding. They will hope someone shows up with the kind of love they once rejected. But mercy is not a blanket that wraps around arrogance. Mercy responds to repentance, and until their heart breaks, not from loss but from awareness, mercy remains at a distance. They had it once in your forgiveness, in your kindness, in the way you gave them chance after chance, believing they could be better, hoping they would choose truth over ego. But they mocked it, they stepped on it. They used your grace like a doormat, not a gift. Now, that same mercy will look them in the eye, not through your voice, but through consequence. They will see who they became. They will face what they did, and the weight of it will not feel like punishment. It will feel like reality, finally speaking. There is no cruelty in divine justice, only clarity. God allows the blind to see, not to shame them, but to give them one final invitation to feel what they made others feel. And when that happens, when the weight finally reaches them, they will cry. Not from guilt alone, but from the ache of wasted mercy. From the realization that they had something rare, something sacred, and they chose to destroy it. And that realization, it burns deeper than any revenge ever could. You won't have to speak. You won't have to be there. Life itself will be the teacher. God will do what only He can. Reveal the truth in a way that pierces even the hardest heart. And in that moment, they will understand that what you gave them wasn't weakness. It was grace. And grace, once refused, doesn't return in the same form. It returns as lesson, as echo, as silence louder than a scream. But you, child of mercy, vessel of patience, you will be free. You will not have to explain yourself. You will not have to carry the weight of their choices. You will have already handed it all over to God. And because of that, the tears they cry will not be yours to dry. They will be their own to carry, their own to understand, their own to answer for. You were never foolish for loving deeply. You were never weak for forgiving repeatedly. You were never naive for believing they would change. What you offered was sacred. What you gave was holy. And even though it was mishandled, rejected, and thrown back at you as if it were nothing, heaven saw it. God recorded every tear, every sleepless night, every silent ache you carried while wearing a brave face before the world. They thought they could continue the cycle forever, that if they spun it fast enough, hurt, deny, blame, repeat, it would somehow protect them from judgment. But cycles don't protect the guilty. They enclose them. They trap them in the very rhythm they created, until the weight of their own actions becomes inescapable. You never needed to return the pain. Your strength was never in what you could do to them. It was in what you refused to become because of them. While they mocked you for being too soft, too forgiving, too patient, you were actually walking in a strength they could never comprehend. A strength that comes from heaven. A strength that refuses to retaliate, not because it cannot, but because it trusts God more than it trusts anger. And that's where the shift begins. When you stopped carrying the need to prove yourself. When you laid down your hurt at the feet of the only one who truly understands. When you let go, not because you were defeated, but because you were done giving energy to people who only came to steal it. Now look at you, not as a victim, but as a survivor of something God is already turning around. You are not standing in the ruins of your story, you are standing at the threshold of restoration. Everything they did was seen, everything they repeated was recorded, and everything they denied will one day stand before them, not as your accusation, but as divine confirmation. Let that truth comfort you now. The trap was never yours to build. The lesson was never yours to teach. The justice was never yours to execute. It was always God's. And He is not a distant observer. He is a righteous defender. His silence was not absence, it was patience. And His patience has a purpose. So hold your head high. Walk forward with peace. The season of breaking is over. You are not in the cycle. You escaped it. And now, while they spin in the whirlwind of their own creation, you walk in grace, in clarity, in strength that only pain could have carved into you. You are not the same person they tried to destroy. You are stronger. You are wiser. You are rising. And they, unless they repent, will learn what you already survived, that you cannot sow harm forever and expect peace to grow, that mercy, once rejected, becomes a mirror, that karma, when commanded by God, never misses its mark. Let the past go. God already picked up every broken piece. Now, He's building something they can never touch.